Hello and welcome to another ViniMark podcast. In today's episode, we chat with Siobhan Thompson, the CEO of Wines of South Africa, to discuss the recent CapeWine 2022 trade show. Now, CapeWine is by far the biggest wine event in the South African wine calendar. And if the numbers coming out of the post-event reports are to be believed, it's also the biggest wine event in the entire Southern Hemisphere. One note mentioned that there were over 400 producers pouring their wines for 3 days, resulting in more than 7 tons of glass bottles that needed to be recycled. So we thought it best to sit down with Siobhan to recap this historical event and also to find out what is next for the South African wine industry. Good morning, Siobhan. Thanks so much for taking time to chat to us today.
Good morning, Jono.
Now, we're here today to talk about CapeWine 2022, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we want to unpack. But before I even get to talking about the event itself, I want to verify one particularly outrageous statistic that I read while I was preparing for this. Is it true that over 26,000 bottles were shipped to the Cape Town Convention Centre during CapeWine?
Yes, it actually is true. It's a huge amount of wine. So what we do is we usually ask for about 2 to 3 bottles because we've got to allow for corkage or any fault in the wine. So not all of that wine was used. I would say probably about 80% of it was used, and the rest would have been returned or donated.
The theme for CapeWine 2022 was Sustainability 360. I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about the process you went through in order to come to that theme.
So a good question. As I mentioned, CapeWine was postponed by a year. So we started planning CapeWine in, I think it was about 2019. So we were getting ready for 2021. And I remember sitting and just looking at the trends of what was going on. And at that time in 2019, you could really see the awakening of the sustainability drive in Europe, particularly in Europe. So UK, Europe sort of hadn't hit the United States much at that time. It was spoken about, but it wasn't really a big trend. And for me, it was very important to position South Africa as thinking to the future and looking at all aspects of sustainability. In 2018, we focused on people because at that time it was very important to talk about initiatives of developing people and fair trade aspects, so ethical trade aspects. And for 2021, my feeling was we needed to do the circle. And I remember sitting in the boardroom saying to my team, you know what? We need to look at a circle and link it to the planet. And then we said, okay, well, what do we call it? And I said, well, it's got to have sustainability in it. And then we went, oh, well, let's do Sustainability 360. So our original logo was a sort of a world, a globe, but it really evolved into that 360 approach in terms of we just very lightly bucketed into 3 things being people, place, and prosperity, because they're all linked together, and we think of them as a triangle, but they're not. They're actually a circle with sustainability, almost like economic sustainability in the heart of it. It became very relevant after COVID or during COVID because we found that COVID really heightened people's minds towards sustainability. And I think that brought people's minds to how do we look after ourselves and our environment for the future. So that's really how the theme was born for CapeWine. But I think it's very apt because there are so many programs that we do have in the wine industry that we don't talk much about. As South Africans, we do things and we get on with them, but we're not good at marketing ourselves. We're not good at telling the world about what we actually do in terms of giving back, in terms of protecting. So, systems like the IPW system and the Wine of Origin system. Wine of Origin system's been around since the 70s. IPW's been around for 12 years. But how many people do we tell about it? People go, oh, is that what that little label is at the top of the neck of the bottle? We don't tell people. And I think we sort of lost a bit of ground. You hear a lot about New Zealand doing stuff, traceability. And I think the lead to CapeWine was the start of saying to the industry, hey, we need to tell the world about what we do when it comes to sustainability. Vita program, look how well it's run now, how far we've come. Fair for Life, Fair Trade, all the development programs that we have like Pebbles and Anna Foundation, just to name a few. That really is the story of the journey of the theme, if you want to put it that way.
You mentioned that we lost a little bit of ground with regards to these initiatives. I heard in a different conversation from some UK-based journalists that South Africa really is a leader in terms of its approach towards regenerative farming or sustainable programs and initiatives. Is that true? Where do we sit in relation to the most conscious producing nations around the world?
So I just wanted to contextualize my comment about we lost ground. I think we lost ground in terms of telling people the message. I don't think we've lost ground in terms of stop doing stuff. We just didn't tell people that we were doing it. So regenerative farming is really quite a hot topic. It's a new hot topic that's sort of come out lately. And I think it's something that people have been doing for a while. You take farming, Reinecker, for instance, Avondale. They've been getting on with this and doing it, but it's never really been publicized as such. Johan's spoken about biodynamic and organic and stuff, but it's sort of taken on a different word. It's not for me to say where we are in the standings of the world, but I do think we are starting out on that process and we're doing pretty well. And for journalists to talk about it shows that we've now woken up and said, hey, we need to tell the world, and they're starting to listen. So for me, that's very positive hearing that feedback. And I think that's where CapeWine is a success, if you start hearing that being repeated.
So earlier when we were talking about sustainability and how it's expressed, you mentioned that in 2018, we focused on the human element, at least on diversity and human sustainability. And you mentioned the theme is linked largely to environmental sustainability, but actually the economy is right at the core of that, right? And they all fit together. Now, here's the question. A particularly hardened capitalist said to me during the show, it's no good being environmentally sustainable if no one is buying our wine around the world. So I have two questions. The first of those questions is sustainability a primary requirement of buyers in our biggest markets?
I think it's becoming, Jono, definitely becoming a requirement. I don't think it is the only requirement, but it was really started more in Scandinavian markets and in the UK market, and you're starting to see it really sort of spread out now. It does play out stronger in what I call developed markets than in emerging markets. In emerging markets, people have their own worries. The last thing that they start thinking about is sustainability. So it is a core sort of push from the European markets. And to a certain extent, you're starting to see it come out in North America now. But it's definitely, when you look at listings or tenders, shall I say, coming out of the monopolies in Scandinavia, it's becoming core. They started off driving quite heavily on ethical trade and organic. Now they've got what they call sustainable choice, which takes all these initiatives into account. And I think that's where South Africa at least is doing well, is that we have IPW for the environment and we have VETA for ethical trade. We also have fair trade. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that it is the core request in terms of buying, but it's becoming more and more important. I think something else that's very important is you've got initiatives in Europe driven heavily by the EU called the Green Deal. And I think it is by 2030 or 2035. I don't have the exact dates. Basically, you're going to have to meet certain requirements. So at the moment, it's please do it, but by that date, it's going to be you're going to have to do it. Are you looking at the packaging you're using and how it can be recycled? Are you treating your people fairly? Are you paying them a fair wage? Are you looking after the environment? So it's all of these things coming into play, which are very important, and we need to be ready for them. I think you'll probably see at a later stage, Mark, the North American market might start adopting these things as well.
So it sounds like we have positioned ourselves well for emerging consumer demands, but we also know we've been hammered by COVID lockdowns over the last couple of years. So I guess the second question coming out of my conversation with the cynical capitalist is, how is South Africa doing currently with regards to its exports? Is there a positive trend? Or are we still struggling?
So, Jono, for me, this is the most frustrating part of the whole sustainability circle, if you want to put it, is that I think South Africa is doing exceptionally well in terms of being seen as a innovative quality supplier of wine. We're exciting. People want to know more about us. They want to drink our wine. But we are battling at the moment to get our wine to the markets. So exports are looking okay. They're not looking great. But the main reason for that is getting the wine to the market. The port issues, the strike that we've recently had, it's not even ended properly yet. So how many millions of litres have we lost in 2 weeks? Then you've got the issues of lack of supply of glass that we had most of last year and part of this year, capsules issues, those sort of things. So for me, it's not a case of that the world doesn't want our wine. We just have a few blockages getting our wine to the world.
And what are the smart people predicting with regards to timelines when it comes to resolving these issues? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
So, Jono, please show me the smart person, because none of us have a crystal ball. The minute you think something's sorted out, the next one hits you. So, who could have forecasted that we were going to have a strike that would impact us for 2 weeks? That for me is the most frustrating thing. But I must say that as South Africans, we tend to get on with it. We just bounce from one thing to the next. And sure, this is a frustration, but we'll get back up and we'll be running sooner than you know it. I think the excitement that's been generated by CapeWine will show results. You'll see more interest about South Africa in publications, and hopefully that will filter through to consumers saying, whoa, I want to try this, or maybe I'll buy another bottle this year. Instead of buying 5 bottles, I'm now buying 10 bottles. I'm always optimistic, and I always see the sort of rainbow at the end of the rain. Sure, we've had a bit of a hiccup, but I think it will recover and get some exports happening soon.
So I have another crystal ball question for you. I went round to producers saying, how was CapeWine for you? Do you feel like it was a great success? And almost without exception, they said to me, well, I guess we'll only know within the next month or two. So what is going to happen in the next month or two that will answer those questions? What does WOSA have to do in the aftermath of CapeWine?
Yeah, I think you could divide it into 2 sort of buckets. One is most importantly, and it's that economic question you keep asking, is we need to improve exports. That's the idea. So you want to be able to get more wine to a market, and you want more people to buy the wine in the market. I'm really optimistic that it's created more deals. I just hope we can get the wine onto the ship very soon. That's the only pressure, I think, is getting those containers, getting it onto a ship. So I think we will see a result of exports climbing as a result of new deals or taking on a stronger portfolio. And then the second bucket is really about the improved image of South Africa. I wouldn't say that South Africa's image is bad. It never has been. I think it's just a case of people saying, wow, South Africa has icon brands. Wow, South Africa has high-tier wines as well as entry-level wines. And I think people have walked away from CapeWine really renewed in their thought about South Africa, the energy of South Africa, the quality of our wine. And I think that's what's very important.
I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I just wanted to get your personal opinion on one more thing. And that is that we do regularly impress journalists from around the world. And we seem to have a great reputation when it comes to people in the industry, especially in Europe and in the UK. But then when I speak to fine wine collectors in different markets around the world, someone who perhaps is filling her cellar with Bordeaux, Burgundy, and Napa cabs, and I ask that consumer what they think about South African wine, we're not even on the radar. I wondered, what are your thoughts on how or why we've managed to impress these public voices, but it isn't trickling down to the consumer? Or am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong. So I think there is a big job still to be done with consumers. And that, I think, is some of the frustration we have as South Africa, is that we don't have a lot of market spend. So a producer, or even Wines of South Africa, we don't have that big bank account that can go out there and run these huge promotions with consumers. Our focus as Wines of South Africa has been mainly business to business. And I think we're doing a good job there. What we need as a country, and that's for Wines of South Africa and for the producers, is to get out and start doing the job with consumers in the markets that are ready for that. Our challenge is we just do not have the funding. So we do need the brand owners to come on board and start promoting and doing more work with their consumers. Because you are 100% right by saying we've got a very good reputation with the majority of those influencers, if you want to call them, be they wine writers, critics, sommeliers, or whatever. The next stage is getting to the masses. And we're starting to introduce some consumer events in our programs, and we've got the markets that are ready for it. We just can't fund big ones. And I think built on top of that is we really do need more brand champions, brands that go out there and really build themselves with consumers. We've got a few that are starting, but we need the big ones. So that when you mention that brand, we go, That's South Africa. You get a Kanonkop. A lot of people are starting to know Kanonkop. Oh, that's South Africa. We need more of those.
Siobhan, I wanted to thank you for your time. I took more than I said I would. I'm sorry for that. But thank you for all the hard work that you do in order to promote wines of South Africa around the world.
Thanks, Jono. It's always great having a chat about what we do and what's out there and the opportunities.
Well, best luck with a productive week ahead.
Thank you.
We've reached the end of another episode of the Vinimark podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to the channel so that you can join us for more conversations around wine commerce, wine science, cellar mastery, marketing, and the rising trends amidst the industry's more adventurous pioneers.